Welcome to Treadmill Talks with Shannon Maves, a podcast for athletes and fitness enthusiasts to pass the time during mind-numbing cardio while I use my no-bullshit coaching style to educate, inspire, and entertain. I'm your host, Shannon Maves. Now let's walk and talk. Hello, and welcome to episode 48 of Treadmill Talks, the one about communicating with your coach. Being able to communicate with your coach truly is such an unbelievably crucial part of any client-coach relationship. If there is no communication, there is no relationship. But if there's too much communication, that can pose different types of challenges. So today I am going to share some of my insight as a coach and as a competitor on how to communicate well with your coach. I've been coaching for over 15 years now, so I have worked with my share of clients who are great at communicating. But to be honest, I've probably worked with more who were not so great at communicating. So what makes someone a good communicator or a bad communicator? Well, you might think that over-communication would be great. If you tell your coach everything, then she will have all of the pieces to the puzzle and she can put them together however she feels appropriate. And personally, I do tend to prefer over-communication to under-communication, and my clients are all made very well aware of this. But if you are always giving too many little details, things can start to get blurry. And what I mean by that is I may not be able to distinguish the difference between what is actually a concern to you versus what is something that you just wanted to inform me of in case it pertained to anything on your plan. For instance, let's say you tell me that your training is going well and your workouts take about an hour. You don't really like cardio, but you'd prefer not to have a step goal. You feel good with these macros, but protein can be challenging to hit on some days. You're hungry at night and sleep is kind of a struggle. Work has been stressful and you also have a work trip coming up in a few weeks. You got in a fight with your husband again and you're feeling kind of down about it. Your kid has a soccer tournament next weekend and you're not sure where or when you're going to be able to work out. And digestion has a little bit slower and your right shoulder's been bothering you. It's good communication, but it's a lot. And so I'm going to have to take a moment to digest all of that information and decide what is and isn't actually pertinent to your training. I'll touch on the key points that I think need to be addressed first, like, well, why the hell is your shoulder bugging you? Is this an injury that we need to be addressing? But then you might be like, oh my God, why didn't she ask about my fight with my husband? Things have been so bad with him on top of work stress, and I hardly sleep anymore because of it. I think the stress is also really starting to affect my digestion, and getting an hour-long workout in on top of everything is really starting to get to be too much. So that's when it's kind of on you as the client to know what is important to communicate versus what can wait until later or be left alone entirely. Because if your shoulder hurts just because you slept on it wrong, and you would have preferred that we talk about the stress, sleep, digestion, and time management issues, then that's kind of on you. I saw it jumbled in with a ton of other information and didn't think things were going that badly since you mentioned enjoying your workouts and that macros were going well. And I can see that progress is still being made. This is one of the many reasons why I offer monthly video calls with my clients. Because like I said, I personally do prefer over communication so that I can have all of the pieces to the puzzle. But sometimes talking things out face to face can really help to clear the air as to what is truly important and should be addressed, since sometimes things don't translate as well via text or email. But on the other hand, under communication can have serious drawbacks too. Because if you check in and tell me that sleep has been difficult and stress is high, but you don't tell me that you're thinking about getting a fucking divorce, then I'm probably going to downplay the situation without realizing it and maybe push you to do something that ends up working against you. It can definitely be a fine line knowing what needs to be said versus what can be left unsaid. But over communicating and TMI aren't necessarily the same thing either. I've had clients who were afraid to tell me personal details because they thought that it was too much information, when in reality, it was very important information for me to know about. And this isn't over communicating if it is pertinent to your training. Coaches are similar to doctors in a lot of ways. And I mean that in the sense that most of us have seen and heard it all. I know when my girls are due for their periods before they do half the time. I know if they have a heavy flow and bad PMS or a lighter and relatively painless period. I know which clients poop once per day and which ones poop 2 or 3 times per day. I know which ones get hemorrhoids if they don't get enough fiber. I know which ones drop weight from cortisol reduction after an orgasm. I know which ones need to work on strengthening their pelvic floor because they pee a little every time they do jumping jacks ever since they had a baby. Okay, I'm sure some of you guys listening are like, oh shit, well, that's me. But don't worry, client confidentiality is still of the utmost importance to me, and it always will be. I'm never going to tell anyone any personal details that could give you away in any type of way. So don't worry, your secrets are safe with me. But sometimes those personal details are actually very relevant to your training. And it's not over communicating if it's made clear that it needs to be addressed. Don't throw it in with a million of other bits of information just because you're embarrassed and you want to kind of hide it within other stuff. I promise I've probably heard it before. And if I haven't, I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh my God, ew. Shit does not faze me, okay? Now, I guess I can't really speak for every coach out there, though. There's probably some coaches who will make you feel uncomfortable about sharing personal information like that. In which case, it's a red flag, because you should feel comfortable communicating with your coach. And if you're not, it's probably not a good fit. You shouldn't feel afraid of your coach either. If you fall off your plan for one meal, one day, a full week, or maybe an entire month, you shouldn't be scared to let them know. Because honesty is good communication. Lying to your coach about something, like not following your plan, is only going to hurt you. Your coach is going to make adjustments based on the information that you give them. We can't help with what we don't know. But one thing we do know is that you hired us to help you. So if you're struggling to adhere to your plan, you have to let us know so that we can help you. Every check-in doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be honest. Because let's say you're in a fat loss phase and you check in looking and weighing the exact same as you have for quite a while, and you tell your coach that you've been hitting your macros perfectly when you've actually been eating off plan quite often. Your coach is going to make adjustments based on the macros they've assigned to you, not realizing that you've actually been eating quite a bit more than you've been reporting. And I promise you that if you are struggling to adhere to your plan, more rigidity is typically not the answer. But I mean, the same thing goes the other way around. Let's say you just competed and you're starting your reverse diet to get food back up, but you're secretly afraid to gain the weight back. So you tell your coach that you've been hitting your macros, even though you're actually going under them on the daily. Again, your coach is going to make adjustments based on the thought that you are following your plan. Don't lie about your weight in a check-in. Your weight is just data. And I want to know if you weigh more or less after a refeed or after a high intensity training session or during certain times of the month. Falsifying that data will leave me with a skewed impression of how your body responds to things. And don't make changes to your plan on your own without your coach's consent. If you're feeling like your coach isn't pushing you hard enough because your friend Sally is doing the same show as you with twice as much cardio, don't just go increase your cardio to be like your friend Sally. Ask your coach why you aren't doing so much cardio. They probably have a damn good answer. And if they don't, I'd say that's another red flag. But doing something like adding more cardio is going to cause your body to get used to that stimulus, and it's going to affect the rest of your plan moving forward. Because if your coach has you doing 30 minutes of assigned cardio and you've been low key doing 60 minutes, then when your coach does start to increase cardio, one of two things is going to happen. You are either going to keep doing that 60 minutes of cardio and your coach is going to be scratching their head like, what the fuck? Why isn't her body responding to the cardio increase? And they're going to make more unnecessary adjustments. Or you are going to have to keep increasing your cardio on top of that 60 minutes that you were doing, eventually leading you to not have time for it or completely burning out. Stick to your plan and follow instructions. You hired a coach for a reason. And it is so important that you trust their process. Sure, there are plenty of different methods of coaching, which is why I say it's important to find a coach who is a good fit for you. Because if you can't trust my methods, then I don't really want to coach you. Find a coach you can trust. Find a coach you are comfortable communicating well with and aren't afraid to ask questions about their process. But don't put too many cooks in the kitchen either. Working with multiple coaches will blur those lines of communication. This is one of multiple reasons why I no longer coach just training or just nutrition. It's both or nothing for me. Because if I'm doing your training and have no idea what you're eating, we're not going to get very far with your progress. And if I'm doing your nutrition, not knowing what your trainer has you doing in the gym, I might be under or overfeeding you. I think the only exception to this is when it comes to posing coaching. I do offer a la carte posing to athletes who are working with other coaches because posing kind of stands by itself. Your posing routine isn't going to affect your training or your nutrition and vice versa. But working with a trainer who is trying to grow your glutes while your nutrition coach has you eating in a deficit isn't going to get you great results. Okay, but I think one of the most important things that often gets overlooked when it comes to communicating with your coach is checking in on time. First of all, if you are sending your check-ins late or not at all, you are communicating to me that you don't give a shit. I can give you the most perfect, well thought out, flawless plan on earth, but if you don't hold up your end of the bargain, that's on you. And skipping or sending your check-in late tells me a lot about how you are approaching your plan. In addition to that, your coach has assigned check-in days for a reason. Most of us coaches are doing a lot more than just client check-ins and writing your plans. I'm working on my podcast every week. I'm filming and editing all of my YouTube videos. I write all of my own social media content. I do all of my own bookkeeping. And clearly I'm going to the gym regularly too, on top of having a life outside of work. So when you send your check-in late, it's not only telling me that you don't really care, but it's also disrespectful to the boundaries that I have set. And there's a solid chance that you are not going to get the undivided attention that you would have received if you had sent it while I was in check-in mode. And I'm not saying that I'm going to half-ass your plan out of spite or anything. I understand that sometimes things do happen. But if I've set aside time to work on writing content or recording a podcast or something, then I have to completely shift the mode that my brain is in to get back to your check-in. If you know you can't check in by a certain time, let me know ahead of time so that we can come up with a different plan together. And if something crazy comes up at the last minute, be respectful and just let me know that, hey, my check-in is going to be a little bit late. Sorry for the inconvenience. I like to compare sending check-ins on time to if you were attending a university and your professor said that you had a paper due by 10 a.m. on Monday. Would you turn it in on Monday night or Tuesday morning expecting him to grade it the same? It's really not any different. Checking in on time is good communication, and communicating well is necessary in order to be coachable, and being coachable is necessary in order to achieve results. You can't show up to practice late and expect to play in the game. When you hire a coach, you're asking someone to help you with something that you either can't or don't want to do on your own. Trusting them and their process is imperative. If you hire them and only kind of do their plan while also doing a little bit of what you had been doing previously, then you're just slowing yourself down. But following a plan blindly without ever asking any questions or expressing any concerns can work against you as well. You need to be clear and concise about what information you want to relay to them, because we can't help with what we don't know. And if you just follow a plan without saying anything, we're going to assume that you're enjoying it and it's going well. But don't muddy up your check-ins with a bunch of unnecessary fluff, because we're human and sometimes we might miss something that you mentioned amidst all of the extra unnecessary information that we were trying to weed out. And we might unintentionally weed out something that was important to you. Honestly, after recording this entire episode, I think it's pretty simple. Respect boundaries and check in on time. Don't lie or make changes to your plan. Relay pertinent information without fear of embarrassment, and leave the extra stuff for another conversation. Again, I personally tend to prefer over-communication. I'd rather you tell me too much and give me a little bit of extra work trying to piece it all together than have you leave out something that you thought was insignificant but actually really changes things. Just please, for the love of God, do not lie to me or ghost me. Those are my two biggest bugaboos. Okay, so I think that about wraps it up for me today. Hopefully this was helpful for you if you've been struggling with communication. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give it a rating or review so we can get Treadmill Talks bumped up in the search results, or share it to your social media for someone else to see that might need to hear this kind of stuff as well. And if you'd like to apply to work with me, then click the link in the show notes. Thank you for listening to Treadmill Talks. If this episode taught you something, lit a fire under your ass, or at least helped you forget how long you've been walking in place, please leave a review or take a screenshot to share on your social media. Don't forget to tag me at Shannon Maves so I can give you some love right back. And thanks again for listening to my Treadmill Talk.